Hello everyone, my name is Mendel Giezen. I'm an associate professor in sustainable urban development and infrastructure, and today I'm going to answer Google's most asked questions about climate change. Okay, so it's time for the first question, and there I'm tearing it up already. What is climate change in a simple definition? So climate change can mean a lot of things, but in the basics, it's a shift in the way the climate is behaving. And this is caused in general by the heating of the climate, 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees centigrade, through the emissions of CO2, methane, and other greenhouse gases. And this climate change can then affect different elements such as storms or rainfall, droughts, heat, and all these kinds of aspects. Time for the second question. Examples of climate change in everyday life. Well, I think if you were here in Europe this summer, you will have seen the effects of climate change. If you take, for instance, Greece this summer, there were big floods just recently, flooding large parts of the landscape. But there were also one of the largest forest fires in Europe. And so you see both the effects, the heat effect and the drought effect, and the flooding effect happening at all time. Another example is the recent flooding in Libya, which of course also caused a lot of loss in life and loss in property, which is also exacerbated by climate change. So, next question. Types of climate change. This is a bit, and that's stuck. The type of climate change, climate change is a general depiction of a shifting climate. So you don't really have types, but you do have different effects. And like I said, one of the effects is that you can have extended periods of drought, but you can also have more extreme weather events, such as extreme downpour of water. And so you have different types of effects caused by climate change. And climate change is difficult because it's a global phenomena. And so on the one hand, one place might get wetter, while the other place might get drier. And this of course makes climate change such a challenge, both in understanding the effects but also in trying to prevent climate change from worsening. Following question. It's a good stickers. How bad is climate change right now? Well, climate change is already quite serious. So you might know the Paris Agreement, and we try to keep climate change within 1.5 degrees centigrade. The difference, this now seems almost impossible to do. 2 seems already difficult. And so we see already a lot of effects of climate change happening. And so it's getting really bad. And you can also see that more and more places, for instance in the Pacific, run the risk of flooding, of islands actually disappearing because of the sea level rise. So it is quite bad, and for instance this year you see an exceptional decrease in Arctic ice, which is a lot stronger than normally, and also last winter there was a lot less ice coming back to the Arctic, right? And these are kinds of accelerators for climate change, because the ice actually cools the climate a bit, but if there's less ice, then it will cool less, and then it will heat more, and then there's less ice, and then so it continues. So we're currently seeing an acceleration of climate change, and so we need an acceleration of policies and actions to reduce the effects and to mitigate the effects of climate change and the causes. Is climate change, and then I cannot read it, real? Yes, very real. There's almost 100% of the research related to climate change argues that climate change is real, it's happening, there are all kinds of, and it's caused by humans. So the science is definitely out there, it's real. Yeah, and I think you can see it every day in the news that it's no longer just a special weather event. These droughts and floods happen too often, increasingly more extremes. Even in countries such as the Netherlands, there's quite often a drought in the summer, leading to obstruction of waterways or the impossibility to rain your garden, for instance. So yeah, climate change is definitely real.